fabric. Yet Cal understood instinctively that this was not the true killer, but a construct, a manifestation engineered by the awakened spirits as gatherers of their lost authority. Guided by knowledge beyond his understanding, Cal channeled his collective resolve, confronting the embodiment of dread with nothing more but the truths he had uncovered. Each word spoken aloud became a litany, resonating within the hallowed space, forcing the harvestman to confront the memories steadfast in stone, the relentless cries for restitution that persisted through silence. The air quivered, saturated with expectancy, as shadows twisted and contorted, spilling their darkness back into the earth from which they sprung. Emancipated cries of joy, scarcely audible, sang into the forest, and with a final shudder, dawn's first light pierced the clearing, vanquishing the specter that once dwelt there. As the first rays of warmth stole across his skin, Cal came to truly grasp his role in the unfolding saga. The spirits of the dead had found peace, and with it, a form of closure. They had claimed their vengeance through him, a channel through which agony had been transcended by unwavering truth. Returning to his cabin, Cal sat before his desk, pen poised over paper. Through ink and sweat, he transcribed his journey. Not merely a story, but a testament and a record, a solemn tribute to Crestwood's liberation. He wrote of how a town haunted by its past used the voice of an unwitting emissary to reclaim its peace. The harvestman was no more. And as for Cal, he realized that the genuine tale lay not in the horror of bygone days, but in the unyielding resolve of a community to overcome trauma. It was a narrative of endurance and the indomitable spirit of those who withstood it, an echo of hope for all who found themselves lost within the shadows.
The lunar lander, Artemis III, descended gracefully, its thrusters delicately balancing the spacecraft as centuries of cosmic dust billowed into the void. This mission was to be a triumph, a testament to humanity's unyielding spirit, set to establish our first permanent outpost on the moon. But as the lander's legs touched the alien soil, Lieutenant Commander Ethan Walsh already sensed an ominous undercurrent that wouldn't be dispelled by the lunar dawn. Disaster struck before the landing. A ferocious solar flare unleashed a barrage of radiation that overwhelmed the lander's systems, leaving it crippled. The crew, the competent and brave Commander Lee, Specialists Grant and O'Neill, and Dr. Rivera, succumbed to the flare's wrath, their lives extinguished by the invisible cosmic storm. Ethan survived by sheer providence, ensconced in an isolated module meant to shield fragile electronics from the sun's ire. Seated in the imposing silence post-landing, Ethan felt the confines of Artemis III closing in around him. The silence was palpable, a living entity that pressed down upon him. Ethan inhaled deeply through the helmet's life support system, grounding himself with a routine born of both necessity and habit, before casting his gaze through the visor's glass to the endless gray of lunar dust and shadows. The sea of tranquility stretched out before him, seemingly dormant but inherently deceptive in its namesake. With communications severed by solar rage, Ethan's immediate priority was to secure the lunar repeater on a ridge 2 kilometers away. Without that link to the orbiting command vessel, he was alone, another soul lost in the void, suffocated by the foreboding moon. Exiting the lander, Ethan's suited form appeared tiny and fragile against the vast moonescape. He was a solitary figure, alone but not entirely solitary, shadows extended in bizarre ways, flickering with unsettling vitality. He progressed across the regolith, each step imbued with gravity unfamiliar to him, exacerbated by a nagging feeling that he was not alone. The tranquility was a deceptive guise, hiding something sinister, lurking just within the shadow's embrace. Determined, Ethan advanced carefully over the lunar terrain, each step raising tiny clouds of moon dust that sparkled under the relentless sun. With each stride, he drew closer to the repeater, yet the atmosphere became fraught with tension. It was as though an invisible force field wrapped around him, constricting tighter as he neared his goal. He paused, the sensation of being observed intensifying. Spectral shapes danced at the edge of perception, swirling in the periphery. Were these manifestations of isolation, products of a mind strained by the weight of solitude and survival, or had he stumbled upon a mystery, profound and impenetrable, hidden in the moon's sterile wastes? Near the repeater, Ethan's vision twisted again, violently. Shadows detached from the grey moon's surface, moving not with the predictable cadence of celestial rotations, but of their own volition. They fluttered around him, whispering, broadcasting frequencies incoherent and unsettling, slipping through his consciousness like thousands of voices barely heard. "Stay focused," Ethan muttered, his voice muffled in the helmet's confines. Repeating the mission motto over and over, he clung to his purpose like a lifeline. But the shadows weaved their narrative, circling around him with the insidious tactility of a shared mental invasion. They probed deeper, seeking knowledge buried within him, their alien consciousness unfurling in an intimacy he had never imagined. Images flared before Ethan's eyes, a child's carefree laughter on Earth, the camaraderie shared with his fallen comrades. These cherished fragments resonated within his mind, manipulated and echoed back at him by the shadows, picking apart the threads of humanity. They seemed to want comprehension, assimilation perhaps, or identification in the unknowable void of space. Instinctively, Ethan resisted. He constructed mental barriers, barriers formed from resolve and memory to stave off their grasp. His mind clung fiercely to the familiar. Faces of loved ones, the purpose of his mission, snatches of life on Earth. Forging a barrier against this intimate attack from the long shadows. Glimpsing the repeater, his beacon of hope, Ethan collapsed to his knees, his internal resources fracturing under the strain. The shadows flickered with heightened intensity, encroaching further, until the terrestrial technology's soft hum sliced through their spectral cohesion. Desperate, he detangled the repeater lines and re-established the connection, recalibrating communion with the distant orbit. Contact re-established, the repeater's oscillation pulsed across the moon dust, severing the creature's hold. They shrank back, muttering wafts of shadow-dissolved tension prolonged no further. Forlorn, outside of the sealed human network. As they shrank away, Ethan kneeled, the barren regolith providing precious calm beneath his suit. Breath slowing, his body ached from exertion, a mix of sparse relief and disbelief cocooning around him. He was alone again, possibly saved in body if not mind. But for how long, he wondered, haunted by an inkling that he wasn't truly alone in this alien land. Rising slowly from the moon dust, Ethan regained limited balance on an unsteady surface. The repeater's reassuring hum vibrated through the vacuum, a stark note of humanity's presence on this distant, hostile body. The communication link restored a connection with orbiting command, locked him back into the threads of earthbound assurance. Yet what they could know, what he could say, would omit the shadows. The immediate aftermath of technological salvation left but a fleeting memory of the spiritual duress he'd faced. How could anyone, back on Earth, comprehend that the shadows were alive, grasping for understanding and merging with him? It was an encounter probably dismissed as the radiation-induced madness of an isolated mind. Reports were transmitted back to Earth, simplified to basic data and incident logs. Ethan remained pragmatic and terse, delineating the technical failures, losses, and eventual repairs without indulging the enigma he'd faced. Humanity would mark it as a tragedy turned technical success, another footnote on mankind's lunar ledger. But within him, shadowed remnants lingered, not reshaping his focus, but curbing the souls of ambition. For now, leaving them unvoiced, tethered them inside the cosmic truth. He knew they would haunt him forever, whispers embedded in the aftermath of his solitary lunar vigil. He'd faced what hung beyond the grasp of empirical understanding, their formless dance a silent echo on the shores of torrential possibilities. Time became fluid aboard the rescue craft, the return to Earth marked by a meditative resignation. He was accompanied by the sightless eyes of his thoughts, elements of his endurance held close against scrutiny and the certainty of disbelief. Days and nights blurred into silent contemplation, devoid of the camaraderie and teamwork that had once been the cornerstone of every successful mission. Landing marked another turning point. The gravity of Earth hooked his weary frame, pulling him into the familiar embrace of home. Despite the personal gravity of unknown truths and shadows lived, but no longer visible. Ceremonies were held, honors bestowed upon the fallen, while words of bravery marked Ethan's steady resilience in escaping a moon infested in absurdity. None knew or could be told of the shadows that had endured alongside him. Even now, reflected they gazed, impressed in his soul. As days moved into weeks, Ethan adapted to life on Earth, yet found solace only in solitude, seeking companionship of stars visible atop earthly skies. When night fell cold and promising, he stared into infinity, searching for truth within each gleaming point of light, knowing the shadows lingered somewhere out there behind the lush cloak of cosmic night. His dreams were punctuated by haunting shades, flashes of light that came less frequently, yet each an imprinted echo born from his time in void's embrace. He accepted, if only to himself, that his bond with the quiet lunar surface, its sentient shadows, could not be severed by distance or time. Thus did Ethan become a guardian of unknowable verity, a sentinel of his own silence and the shadow's dancing edge. His voice, however, spoke only of technical fears, devoid of spectral awareness. Humanity relentlessly ventured again, guided by unyielding curiosity, eternally blind to the moon's shadowy inhabitants. Journalists forewent another story, as Ethan's lips remained sealed, ignorance tributary to mystery, a trusted, valiant facade shielding Ethan's knowledge under the chaste veneer of an explorer who'd returned from darkness unscathed. But continually, alongside physical reality and the moon's familiar sheen from far below, shadows watched, abiding unspoken affinity tied between sentinel and seer, destined to forever guide each hallowed breath back through the touch of eternity. Ethan returned a survivor, the sacred keeper of untold secrets, a guardian against darkness that peer beyond the edges of starlit touch. He snugly harbored light in celestial shadow, where cosmic echoes kept silent referendums upon those hushed neath eternal night.
Deep within the Appalachian Mountains, where mist clings to the ground and seems to exhale through the dense thickets of pine, a whisper of a legend roams from town to town. The tale of the Terrazzo Brothers Circus. Unlike other circuses with their kaleidoscope of lights and vibrant banners, Terrazzo's was an unfolding legend with a shadowy reputation and an allure that both repulsed and intrigued. For Eleanor Reeves, standing outside the faded marquee advertising the most spectacular show on Earth. The circus represented not wonder or excitement, but a profound sense of dread. Clowns, the root of that fear lay in painted faces and exaggerated grins capable of hiding real horror. When circumstances forced her to become part of the caravan's curious ensemble, she felt the layers of terror she'd buried deep within begin to resurface. Her life had spiraled after losing her only living relative, an aunt whose unexpected passing left her with nothing but debts and an old suitcase filled with mementos and half-read letters. With no job prospects and creditors looming, Eleanor was desperate. Her plight caught the eye of Marco Terrazzo, the enigmatic ringleader of the travelling circus, who promised escape and opportunity for those willing to join his troupe. The alluring promise of food, lodging, and the vague notion that she might find something of value amidst the frenetic world of itinerant performers drew Eleanor in. Yet she couldn't shake the disquiet that amplified tenfold when she joined their caravan. Her first night was one of anxious insomnia, her tiny cot beneath the tent's canvas roof feeling more like a trap. The sound of her fellow performers mingled through the thin barrier, separating her from the night, a chorus of practiced routines and laughter with an underlying melancholy. Eleanor quickly realized how much she didn't understand. Hushed warnings exchanged in shadows and rehearsals drowned out by an unnerving tension that echoed her fears more loudly than applause ever could. Days bled into nights, and the circus held more secrets than she had imagined. Under its celebrations simmered a pervasive gloom threaded through the laughter, like a malignant vine. And always it felt connected somehow to the clowns. Lucien, their leader, with his eternally twisted smile and unsettling gaze, spoke to her only briefly, his words more insinuation than actual communication. The clowns were not like others she had encountered. These were figures that made her recoil as if her instincts warned of their wrongness. Something ancient seemed to whisper beneath the surface. "You'll get your sea legs soon enough," coaxed Beatrix, an aerialist with fiery hair and a knowing grin that hinted at secrets. "But beware the tents they weave. Lucien's clowns have a knack for weaving things too tightly." Pressed to elaborate, Beatrix only shrugged Eleanor's questions away, leaving her frustration to fester. Eleanor was torn between fleeing and the pull of mysteries she found herself entwining with. It was beneath the canopy of a starless night that the first true inkling of the circus's surreal nature crept into focus. Exhausted from a day of menial labour, carrying jugs of water, checking rigging, and maintaining caravans, Eleanor stumbled upon a spectacle beneath the darkened tent spire. The main tent was supposedly empty, yet, peering through a tear in the fabric, she witnessed Lucien and his clowns at a private rehearsal, a macabre dance of shadows and laughter. Their painted faces flickered in the dim lamplight, moving in eerie synchronicity as if guided by something beyond the immediate, tendrils of time and intent not meant for understanding. Lucien caught her gaze, his eyes glinting a question that required no verbal answer. The clowns broke formation, and Eleanor skittered away, breathless, a cold unease gripping her as she fled into the night. Sleep was elusive, her thoughts a whirlpool of questions, her fear of clowns transformed into something deeper. Rumours whispered among carnies, furtive and palpable. Fear prickled every nerve when she crossed paths with them. Gerald, an aging juggler, noted her distress and offered words of encouragement like a mentor. "Be careful round here," he advised one evening, adjusting the worn cap perched on his greying hair. "Things have gone missing before, and so have people." His tone was gentle, yet his words struck Eleanor. Answers came haltingly, tales that sounded more like rumours, yet she believed them. She learned of disappearances swept aside by murmurs about those who vanished without trace. Her nights became a dizzying routine of unease. The fog that nestled in every corner of the circus seeped into her dreams and thoughts. And always, she was drawn back to the clown's performance, compelled to watch their acts, tinged with something far beyond mere performance. Beneath the charade of exaggerated gestures and slapstick routines lay a sinister bond, a strange and unsettling connection running deeper than mere performance. To Eleanor, their laughter felt hollow, their antics masking a darkness that seeped like ink into the fabric of the circus. Lucian's penetrating gaze was unsettling, his eyes hinting at a reality she was unwilling to confront. One particularly oppressive night, Eleanor lay restless in her cot as her mind swirled with nightmares. She awoke heart-pounding, driven by a determination to uncover the mysteries intertwined with her fears. She found herself at Lucien's quarters, compelled to enter and unveil the hidden truths. Within his space, a museum of curiosities awaited. Costumes hung limply, masks frozen in mirth. They seemed to watch her. Paranoia crawled up her spine as she thought of the eyes behind each mask, mocking her intrusion. Among the disarray, a document caught her eye. Unfolded, it released a metallic scent, evoking past and present. Her fingers traced archaic script, detailing an understanding far beyond ordinary performance, a pact with something ancient and powerful. The realization unsettled her. As she read, a sound, more felt than heard, filled the room. She turned sharply, expecting someone behind her, but met only the mask's gazes. A heavy presence lingered, footsteps sounded outside, jolting her to awareness. Driven by urgency, Eleanor refolded the document, fled into the misty fields, her heartbeat echoing fear. In her tent, Eleanor clutched the papers. Lucien's grasp was clear, extending beyond captivating shows through secrecy enforced by coercion. But escape wasn't her only hope. A deeper purpose emerged. Compelled by understanding, she saw staying as a path to face these truths. The following days grew tense. Her resolve now pulsed with a desire to expose the spectacle's grim heart. Though weighted by childhood fear, the pull toward confronting Lucien was undeniable. Festival night dawned cool, the air electric with excitement. Eleanor met Beatrix backstage, their shared defiance kindling a bond through unspoken endurance. Gerald offered support, clutching a charm as a protective talisman. As showtime approached, Eleanor felt drawn toward the big top's ring. Lucien commanded the stage with his invocation. Eleanor emerged from shadows into harsh lights, papers as a tangible promise to unveil truths. Lucien beckoned, offering inclusion, a construct within their deranged pageantry. Eleanor, shoulders set, stepped forward unafraid. Here at last was her confrontation, an orchestra of cruelty faced with defiance. The clowns surrounded her. Eleanor unfurled the document, spoke aloud, shaking the illusions. The jeering smiles sought to drown her senses, yet each word pierced the reverie they'd woven. Gerald and Beatrix, standing by, fortified her with silent support. Lucien's grip began fracturing, the circus spirit dissipating within their truth's bright recognition, the beaten pact collapsing at her conviction. Dawn surged through the tent, clowns reduced to silhouettes, spectres exposed by rival light. Eleanor exhaled, seeing the patron's world crumble into displaced vision. Freed, she stepped into the day's freshness, sunlight warm as tents retreated like ghosted dreams. A scattering crowd parted, the carnival's essence lost, found again as mere theatre recounting past lives bound by illusion. Lucien's domain receded, sown with dust. Embracing Gerald and Beatrix, Eleanor felt warmth through newfound ties, not haunted, but woven with family. Her path lay beyond this place. Life continued along horizons untethered by fear. As the circus departed, once fearsome masquerades turned to distant echoes redeemed. Freed from shadows, having embraced the light, Eleanor smiled. She'd become the author of a new tomorrow, untethered and whole beneath an open sky.
The town of Eldridge Hollow had always been quiet, nestled among rolling hills and dense woodlands. Its charm lay in its simplicity, a place where everyone knew each other, where the pace of life was gentle, and nature still held a commanding presence. But as summer waned and autumn's crisp breath began to paint the leaves gold and crimson, an unease spread among the townsfolk like a simmering fog. The first whispers started on the outskirts. Farmers complained of increased spider activity around barns and fields. Webs woven in intricate patterns hung thickly from trees, barns, and even farm equipment. At first, it was dismissed as nothing more than a seasonal surge. But the truth was far more insidious, something darker, lurking beneath the quiet exterior of village life. Jeannie Wilkes, Eldridge Hollow's unofficial chronicler of happenings, documented the emergence with an artist's eye. Her grandfather, perched on the porch, pipe in hand, passing down tales of nature's power with the gravity of myths. Among them was the legend of the spider tide, a natural anomaly said to blanket the land with arachnids on rare occasions. Jeannie, fascinated yet skeptical, penned her observations eagerly, soon realizing that this was not a quaint legend. It was an unfolding reality. The unease shifted to alarm when Anders, the owner of the local diner, reported that every crevice and corner of his establishment was brimming with life. He recounted how legions of spiders spun webs with fevered haste, coating tables and chairs as if guided by an unseen command. Customers recoiled in horror as the spiders stubbornly held their ground, their purpose seemingly inexplicable. On the surface, life in Eldridge Hollow attempted to proceed as normal. The mayor, a portly man with an aversion to alarmism, dismissed growing concerns with assurances that nature simply had its peculiar cycles, but his words rang hollow as the birthing populace of eight-legged creatures swarmed uninvited throughout the town. In the shadows, theories bloomed. Whispers of the spider tide transformed from obscurity into dreaded acceptance. Storefronts remained closed longer each day, fearful patrons scattering indoors with every new report. The spiders, their numbers now uncountable, threaded through the town en masse as though joining a silent, inexorable march. Jeannie embarked on her own investigation, gathering evidence in every form. She noted the creatures' behavior, how they congregated in specific areas, the towering church steeple, where spiders descended in silk cascades, and the forgotten ruins on the town's perimeter, wrapped in webbed shrouds. According to local rumor, an eldritch force innled the spider tide, acting as a harbinger of something yet more dreadful. A theory that resonated disturbingly as Jeannie noticed the rising unease in the arachnid army around them. Faces once familiar grew shadowed by fear, suspicion, threatening to fracture the bond of kinship among the villagers. Spider populations continued to swell, defying logic and explanation. Jeannie reviewed her grandfather's stories with fresh eyes, seeking wisdom amid ancestral truths. Each narrative revealed tiny truths until one stark fact gleamed in urgent understanding. Eldridge Hollow stood at the heart of the anomaly, central to the convergence now underway. The growing twilight brought only chaos. Eldridge Hollow seemed cursed, overrun by a malign intelligence animating the arachnid masses. It was not simply nature at play, manipulating currents in an unsettling dance. There was a reason, one hidden beneath layers of superstition and local lore. Townsfolk barricaded windows and doors, ritualistically burning candles and reciting prayers learned in childhood. But Jeannie refused to submit to these simplistic coping mechanisms. Instead, she penned a plea for help, casting her words beyond Eldridge Hollow in hopes that someone, an expert or a believer, would regard their plight with legitimacy. As panic set in, events turned violent. A misunderstanding between two neighbors escalated as nerves frayed to the breaking point. The cacophony of fracture mirrored the spiraling frenzy within the web-strewn domain. That night, Jeannie experienced a new horror. Dreams violated by shadows of creeping legs and eyes that spun art in silk woven from starlit ether. Driven by restless urgency, she rose before dawn, determined to learn the spider tide's origin. With notebook in hand and a lantern lighting the way, she ventured into the woodlands, tracing paths etched into memory from childhood adventures. The weight of discovery burdened her steps until she stood at the threshold, her eyes cast on the ruins enveloped in thread-like sinew. As she stepped into the sepulchre of shadow and moon's glow, something whispered through the web-strewn trees, an ancestral voice, calling with gravity's own longing. Jeannie felt the space between one world and the next in its breath, the place where shadow was substance and time whispered memory. Yet amid this embrace, a reality unbidden unfolded before her eyes, a pull toward an unsettling truth that reached beyond reason's clutch. Morning broke over Eldridge Hollow, painting a deceptive scene of stillness. Jeannie's return from the ruins brought with it an invisible thread of anxiety, wound deep within her consciousness. Though heartened by the town's half-hearted camaraderie, an understanding lay dormant, a secret known but concealed by fear of acknowledgement. She immersed herself in books, retrieved from the dusty records of Eldridge Hollow's library, tomes detailing local folklore, natural anomalies, and meteorological phenomena. As Jeannie delved into the pages, revelation took form amid the inked histories. Each entry converged on a central mystery, a tale chronicled in fragments and whispers, woven into the geographical heart of the town. But there was more. Her own intuition unveiled a secret desire enacted by hands unseen. A cryptic equilibrium held the town in the shadow's balance, orchestrating life's subtle symphony. In the web-bound reaches of her consciousness, Jeannie discerned a pattern connecting to the spider tide, a destiny preordained by more than ancestral myths. The spider's presence was no random anomaly. It was a convergence heralded by energies magnetically aligning forces intangible and profound. The realization came with startling clarity. Eldridge Hollow, possessing its own magnetic pull that entwined both humanity and nature, an essence living deeper than merely roots and stone. Empowered by insight, Jeannie resolved to face the town with truth's brilliance unveiled. Her words reverberated within the town hall, casting discordant light amid the people gathered. "We are not victims," she declared, voice unwavering. "We stand at the center of a unique manifestation. The spider tide is not an omen, but a reflection, a mirror to our own unity and understanding." At first, dissent rippled through the audience, their minds shackled by fear. But her convictions resonated powerful bonds among those listening, slowly drawing together disconnected strands of thought. What seemed curse became an observance realized, the convergence of forms ushered by nature's cycles, seeking neither malice nor benevolence. A collective decision emerged. Eldridge Hollow would embrace this convergence, guided by the knowledge shared within. Understanding awakened acceptance, seeded within each soul by the energy coursing through the very heart of their home. Together, they transformed fear to understanding. The spiders no longer malevolent, but a symbol of nature's grandeur. And so, the webs were left to glisten undisturbed, a testament to the spider's genius. The townsfolk moved freely, weaving their daily lives alongside their eight-legged companions. As each generation matured, the spider tide continued its dance, a symbiotic embrace marking Eldridge Hollow, a pulse marking place and time unfurled. It was during this reconnection, under Twilight's forgiving veil, that Jeannie uncovered the twist in their shared narrative, one hidden in plain sight. Among the countless spiders, Jeannie noticed a glint, an otherworldly shimmer upon an intricate web, a remnant of a cosmic harvest beyond comprehension. Eldridge Hollow stood not as mere ground, but as a fulcrum, a crossroads, resting at edges of unimagined dimensions. The convergence was not cyclical happenstance, but a phenomenon nurtured by elemental tides migrating through both human and arachnid form. The spider tide remained enigmatic, unswayed by titanic gratitudes or the scales of human reason, every cycle ever measured in quietude beyond ken. Yet there lay in symbiosis the glint of future, woven with endless adventure among worlds untold, where shadows held the allure of whispered light. The realization of their cosmic kinship within this communion offered enlightenment, a subtle magic born through understanding, ushering Eldridge Hollow into an eternal dance. It was as though webs spun between Eldridge Hollow and other realms, each thread whispering secrets only shared in darkened stillness. As Jeannie left the town hall, she gazed upon the hills above Eldridge Hollow. The wind wove its sinuous charm over the landscape, carrying webs from distant dawns to fringes unseen, woven in harmony across stars to elsewhere, guiding hearts of earthly kin.
The night air was thick with anticipation as the 5 friends gathered around the flickering campfire, its light casting eerie shadows across their faces. They had been planning this weekend getaway for months, a chance to escape the mundane routines of life and indulge in the thrill of adventure. Mia, the de facto leader of the group with her wild curls and even wilder ideas, had been the one to find the brochure. It was tucked inside the pages of an old library book. The Chamber of Shadows, a night you'll never forget, only one will survive. The others had laughed, assuming it was just some gimmicky haunted attraction trying to drum up business. But Mia had insisted. Come on! It'll be like one of those escape room challenges. Besides, how often do we get to do something completely terrifying? Her enthusiasm was contagious, and soon enough Mia, Jake, the stoic and steady athlete, Zara, ever skeptical but secretly a thrill-seeker, Lila, the gentle soul whose love for horror movies didn't quite match her nerves, and Ethan, the tech wizard who believed every experience was made better with a bit of digital documentation, piled into the car with sleeping bags and snacks. As the car's headlights penetrated the creeping fog, the group arrived at an imposing stone building looming against the midnight sky. The lantern-lit path leading to the entrance was bordered by gnarled trees that whispered in the cold breeze, setting an uneasy tone. The Chamber of Shadows, Zara read aloud from the sign above the entrance. Her voice trembled slightly, an unspoken acknowledgement of the foreboding that lay ahead. Inside, the air was even colder, biting into their skin as a figure emerged from the shadows. Dressed in a long cloak, the stranger had a face obscured by the hood. Welcome, brave souls. You've chosen to embark on a journey like no other, the figure intoned, voice dripping with theatrics. Behind each door lies a test, a challenge of both the mind and spirit. You must work together or fall to the shadows. Remember, only one will survive. Ethan smirked, his phone ready to capture their reactions. Sounds like a good deal for a video, he whispered to Mia, who rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress a grin. The others chuckled nervously, a tension-laden camaraderie binding them as they stepped forward. The first chamber was decorated in an eerie replica of a Victorian parlour, complete with creaking wooden floors and dusty, moth-eaten drapes. A fireplace roared to life unexpectedly, illuminating a letter splayed open on a small table. Solve the riddle to proceed, or forever be trapped by greed. Oh, great. A puzzle to start off with. Classic, Jake muttered, scanning the room for clues. The others fanned out, searching through forgotten knickknacks and cobweb-covered furniture. It was Lila who discovered the clue nestled inside an ornate clock, a series of numbers etched in brass, paired with cryptic symbols. After several minutes of frantic deduction and rising panic, Zara's quick wit deciphered the riddle. Each number matches the letters of the alphabet. Combine them to spell trust. With a click, a hidden door swung open, revealing a staircase spiraling into darkness. One by one they descended, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the oppressive silence that seemed to swallow their voices. The second chamber was different, walls lined with mirrors that distorted their reflections into grotesque creatures. Their task was simple, yet sinister. Find the key hidden in the reflections. Ethan, ever the pragmatist, attempted to find the logical angle to view the key. But the more they searched, the more the reflections began to whisper, sowing seeds of distrust among them. "It's messing with our heads," Ethan said, frustration tightening his voice. "The mirrors are playing tricks." It was Mia who finally figured it out. "Look past the shadows," she murmured, repeating what she had noticed one reflection chanting. Shifting her perception, she found the key hovering just out of sight, an illusion waiting to be grasped. The door creaked open, but the tension lingered in the air like a phantom as they entered the third chamber. This time the room was stark and bare, save for a single chair and a gramophone whose needle sat expectantly on a record. With a shrug, Ethan set it to play and a haunting lullaby filled the air. Yet it was not the music that seized their attention, but the words whispered beneath the melody. One name, repeated over and over. Mia's. "Why me?" Mia whispered, fear threading her voice. "The shadows have chosen," Jake said cryptically, eyes sworn to seriousness he rarely showed. "It's supposed to be you." With no further clues, the chamber became a cold chamber of decision. Mia, trembling but resolute, sat in the chair. "Whatever it is, I have to face it." Her friends surrounded her, their support wordless as the shadows inched forward like living smoke tendrils to envelop Mia. She gasped, a sharp intake of breath as if plunged into ice water, before disappearing from their view. Shocked silence loomed, followed by chaos. "No, no, no, this isn't part of the game," Lila cried, her voice breaking. Zara grasped her shoulder, trying to comfort with a touch that belied her own rising terror. But before panic could take more root, the shadows receded, leaving Mia standing unharmed, albeit visibly shaken, as the whispers faded into nothingness. "Let's just keep going," she urged, determined to not linger in the past. With her voice as their anchor, they pressed on. The corridors twisted, disorienting them until they arrived in the next chamber, greeted by a macabre tableau, a feast laid out on an ancient wooden table, surrounded by empty chairs. A note stained with something dark and unidentifiable warned, "Eat or be eaten. Choose wisely." None of them dared move, all eyes on the feast as if it were an enemy laying in wait. Finally, driven by hunger and resolve, Jake approached. "It's another trick," he said, confidence masking doubt. "It has to be." The unveiling task was undertaken cautiously. Each scrutinized food item unveiled clues hidden beneath dishes. It was Lila who discovered the final puzzle, a message baked beneath the icing of an untouched cake. "Change your fate." Slivers of courage reached the surface. Jake, crafting a plan with Zara's analytical mind, reasoned that this was a metaphor, an opportunity to remake choices they'd assumed to be out of their control. As one, they overturned their feast, revealing a blood-red knife inscribed with the word "sacrifice" beneath the table. It immediately triggered a shift, a portal opening beside them, the air shimmering like a mirage. The final chamber awaited, a cavernous hall filled with statues lining the walls, each an intricately detailed depiction of fear personified. The murals on the ceilings told stories of struggles and betrayals, the shadowed corners teeming with echoes of forgotten screams. The cloaked figure from their beginning reappeared, the cowl lowered to reveal a face of shifting forms. It spoke, voice a chilling reminder of the journey walked. The one who will survive must face their darkest fear. The friends exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing among them. They'd started this together and they'd face this too as one. But as the shadows encroached, they instinctively stepped back, alone in the face of destiny. One by one, the fears materialized from the depths of their psyche. Jake's fear of failure shadowed him in the form of twisted, disappointed reflections. Lila, ever afraid of being alone, watched as her friends slowly disappeared to leave her in chilling solitude. Ethan's pixelated world blurred, trapping him in a virtual labyrinth with no exit, terrified of a reality he couldn't escape. Zara confronted her heritage of skepticism, shadows of doubt estranging her from herself, questioning every action until paralyzed. And Mia, the leader, was thrust into a shadow version of herself, the darkness coursing through her veins, echoing silence he'd always feared might consume her, the fear of losing control becoming the monster hidden in expectation. Yet amid the nightmare, realization bloomed. Nothing changed unless they changed it. Mia was the first to fight back, screaming against the shadows clutching her throat, banishing her doubts by defiantly stepping beyond their reach. The others followed. Jake faced his reflections with confidence. Lila envisioned hope, recognizing her bonds tethered beyond sight. Ethan focused his mind, coding reality until he found a flaw. Zara relinquished doubt, embracing possibility, allowing freedom to flower. The cracks formed in the chamber of shadows as determination superseded fear. The cloaked figure shuddered, unraveling until nothing more than empty fabric fell to the floor as each friend defied fate and banished their spectres. Light exploded through the chamber, burning away lingering darkness and revealing a simple wooden door, unmistakably the exit. Emerging into the world, dawn pinked the horizon, everything near lit with the golden glow of triumph. They were together and alive, resilient in friendship, armed with knowledge of their fears, and stronger for it. They hugged, laughter breaking the stillness, binding them, having faced shadows both literal and figurative, returning from the chamber of shadows more alive than before. The promise of only one surviving echoed, true yet untrue. For while they'd entered fractured by fear, they'd emerged, each reborn. Only one of their truest selves had survived.
The rolling hills of Ireland, a verdant expanse speckled with the hues of heather and gorse, unfolded beneath the hazy autumn sky. A narrow road wound its way through this patchwork, leading a minibus towards its destination, Dunfane Castle, a stone sentinel that loomed imposingly atop a rugged hill. A group of eager tourists peered from the windows, eyes wide with anticipation and a hint of superstition fostered by tales of Ireland's supernatural. Guiding the tour was Connor, a young local with an affable demeanor and an encyclopedic knowledge of Gaelic lore. As the minibus crested the hill, revealing the castle's battlements silhouetted against the sunset, Connor began recounting its storied history. "Welcome to Dunfane Castle," he intoned, his voice imbued with theatrical charm. It stood the test of time through battles and betrayals, a testament to the era when chiefs and clans ruled these lands. The tourists listened enthralled, imagining shadows of past nobility treading those ancient stones. Among them, Isabella and Jake, a couple celebrating their recent engagement, felt the castle's aura nesting deeply within their romantic reverie. The allure of Dunfane's mystical charm, whispered through generations, enhanced their anticipation. As night descended, they reached the castle, enveloped by heavy clouds obscuring the crescent moon. The group disembarked and gathered their belongings, their footsteps hushed by the gravel path leading to the entrance. Connor unlocked the tall, iron-bound doors with practiced ease, welcoming them into the somber embrace of the castle's great hall. The interior brimmed with relics, faded banners hung beside a grand fireplace, Dust motes danced in the golden light cast by flickering lanterns. Whispers of antiquity permeated the air. It was as if the stones themselves echoed distant mysteries. Despite its seasoned grandeur, an uncertainty tinged the air, ticking faintly against the smoldering hearth. Connor directed them through a hurried exploration, painting pictures of courtly intrigue with his words. The charmed group was shown spiral staircases that wound up into drafty towers, echo-laden corridors, and portraits of long-past occupants, faces trapped in regal stares that sometimes felt uncannily alive. Most importantly, Connor whispered conspiratorially, halting at a doorway leading to the depths below, is the legend of the vault, hidden somewhere within these stone walls, a long-lost treasury of the chieftain, cursed and abandoned with his lineage. The night crept forward, wrapping the castle in its inky embrace. The group retired to their rooms eagerly, though piqued curiosity held Isabella awake. Wandering the torch-lit halls, she marveled at how the stones whispered stories of their own, age-old tales of ambition, betrayal, and loss as seen through conjured eyes. She found herself drawn toward a specific chamber, neglected and shadowed, featuring a portrait, different from the rest. The painted eyes followed with unnerving accuracy, a glint hinting at secrets long buried. Beneath this gaze, Isabella sensed an expansion of the narrative, one distinctly guided by the undercurrent of unsatisfied hunger. Dreaming of hidden troves and veiled histories, Isabella meandered back, but sleep remained elusive. A chill invaded her mind, the eerie feeling of being watched intermingled with the castle's intense isolation, a guardian of truths unseen. The night settled deeply across Dunfane Castle as dreams traversed both the living and those unquiet. Suddenly the silence was shattered, an unnatural howling that rose from the depths, reverberating through stone and marrow alike, rousing remaining souls to wakefulness. Connor's voice, strained and hurried, called through the walls. "Come down, all of you. Something's stirring below." Gathering in confusion and haste, the group assembled, tremors of fear leapfrogging across their consciousness. The shadows thickened as Connor led them toward the source of the chilling wail emanating from the castle's underbelly, a passageway hidden behind brushing cobwebs, laden with secrets waiting to emerge. A sense of foreboding hung heavy. As they descended ancient steps into the cold bowels of the castle, lamps flickered wildly in an unseen draft sweeping through the corridors as spectral figures enfolded themselves from forgotten spaces. Crossing the bound threshold, they entered a sprawling chamber, its walls eerily suffused with a glow that revealed vaults and containers, long unopened. Collections of ancient wealth lay before them, tarnished and bound with chains steeped in ages past. Yet upon looking closer, they shuddered at the figures surrounding the room. Translucent shapes, the ghostly possessors of this forsaken place, stirred, eyes filled with insatiable greed fixed upon the treasure, every covetous nuance etched with a hunger that resonantly joined their unwavering stares. In self-twined terror reverberated through those gathered. Spectres' translucent forms hovered near the tarnished wealth their souls had long been bound to guard. Isabella felt a cold rush, a prickle of dread entwined with curiosity. Their ghostly visages, twisted in eternal greed and longing, were alarmingly articulate, each movement a dialogue between the living and the departed, calling silently for reclamation. Every ghostly eye seemed locked on the group, particularly Isabella, as if seeing her not merely as an intruder, but as a potential savior. She caught the eye of the chieftain, a hollow gaze that communicated a depth of lifetimes, lost yet beseeching redemption. Though she trembled under their scrutiny, Isabella felt clarity blossom within her, a realization born of whispers that tides had shifted, and she was the key. The air grew thick with anticipation, a hypnotic symphony pulling at Isabella's consciousness. The tourists clung together, eyes wide, breaths quickened by the spectral drama unfolding. Connor, though pale, held a fervent light in his eyes, daring to believe in folklore truth given flesh. Isabella, heart pounding, stepped forward, courage woven from desperation and resolve. Her voice echoed in the chamber, encompassing more strength than felt. "What do you desire? Why linger bound to this place?" The chieftain's visage flickered as he spoke, voice like rustling leaves, carrying the gravity of ancestral tones. "Greed chained us here. Lust for gold consumed our end, leaving us guardians of echoes. You, daring to ask and listen, might help us find release, a key to unshackle eternal watch." His words sparked understanding, a cursed cycle driven by avarice, needing the selflessness of the living. The treasure pulsed with binding force. Isabella recalled tales of cursed wealth, binding coveters to doom, a lesson in folly. In that moment, Isabella's fear gave way to determination. She had to exchange avarice for redemption, aiding spirits in relinquishing wealth. "Is there a way to free you?" Isabella pressed, stepping closer, the group observing with bated breath. "Yes," the chieftain replied, spectral form stabilizing, hope cresting. "A pledge, manifest through goodwill and action, gifted to the living, restoring balance disrupted by greed must be honored. Let the vault's wealth serve people, breathing life into community." Isabella nodded, feeling a righteous ceremony within her thoughts, emboldening spirit. She turned to fellow tourists, voice imbued with vulnerability and mission strength. "We can help them move on. This treasure can aid the living, revitalize Eldridge, honor legacy, and write a new chapter." Whispers turned to nods as potential for newfound purpose was realized. Envisioning Eldridge rejuvenation, they accepted their extraordinary part in a tale. Initially skeptical, tourists saw doubts transform into resolve, transcending mere spectatorship. As they began cataloging and organizing treasure for town benefit, each gesture weighed in the spiritual realm. The chieftain's kin shimmered with each act, unraveling from greed. Energy that once anchored now sparked connections, erasing chains of desire. As moonlit hours passed, tangible became ephemeral. Morning's light softly broke through openings, casting onto dissipating forms, a cascade of unity freed beyond mortality. Liberated from earthly ties, ghosts nodded gratitude to Isabella and group, dispersing like mist with dawn's kiss, lifting a film from the world, revealing life's vibrancy, air alive with new energy. Radiance filled the chamber. Isabella understood she joined something larger, a guardian stepping into history, completing her story amid vibrant past lives, liberated by shared purpose. Unified joy swept through Dunfane Castle as spectral release became tangible, a promise honored and renewed. The cycle of avarice broke, gifting rebirth tales through stones set free. Outside, air crackled with rain and redemption. A chorus of newfound affinity rose through Eldridge, echoing truth across hills. Harmony abides. As they left the castle, Isabella felt peace, knowing spirit's release brought prosperity and solidarity. Starlight graced with wisdom, an enduring testament to courage, understanding, trust. Gentle wind whispered tales to stones, celebrating legacies embraced by life-giving hands. Though past's echoes lingered with redemption's embrace, Isabella knew she and companions secured a sanctuary within legend. Eldridge stood renewed by eternal fidelity, a victorious end to greed. In its wake rose a song, a requiem and renewal, a story for generations, binding people and spirits beyond time. Ethan Blake had always been captivated by the allure of the abandoned, of places where echoes of the past lingered long after humanity had departed. An intrepid traveler from Washington, Ethan made it his life's mission to explore sites steeped in history, where the heavy hands of time and tragedy left their marks. His exploits, captured vividly on social media, had taken him from the eerie ghost towns of the Wild West to the